Robert Ford is the former U.S. ambassador to Algeria and also to Syria. Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Ford, for speaking to us. It's great to have you with us because, not least because you've served in two countries that are so central to these events. And I'd just like to start by asking you, perhaps most of us here in France are particularly interested by the beheading of our national, Hervé, who was killed in Algeria, Hervé Gordel, who was killed there. And just tell us, were you surprised to know that a splinter group of the Islamic State organization actually even existed inside Algeria?
We've seen splinter groups from Islamic extremist groups develop in Algeria for the past 20 years. What's interesting is that this particular group in eastern Algeria, in the Kabylie region, declared loyalty to Omar al-Baghdadi and the Islamic State, while other elements of the Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb group have remained loyal to the Zawahiri, something like we've seen actually in Syria.
And obviously, we just heard there the UN Security Council voting in new laws, that they unanimously voting in new laws, or at least a demand for new laws from countries to do more to stop the flow of jihadis going to conflict zones around the world and to make it a crime for them to do so. Do you think measures like that are actually going to have a significant effect?
I think the efforts to curtail movements of fighters, it has to be done, and it's not going to happen overnight. There are literally thousands, tens of thousands of foreign fighters now in places like Syria and Iraq, and many of them have already been there for a while, and they won't leave anytime soon. But at least we can start reducing gradually the inflows of new fighters. And for sure, there has to be intelligence cooperation among concerned governments, and then particular governments, especially those where many fighters come from, North African governments, for example, some governments in the Gulf, they're going to have to make special efforts to block fighter flows at a national level.
If the Western governments and the Arab governments in the coalition want to really strike the Islamic State organization hard, they would do well, would they not, to bring in Iran and Syria and bring them on board in that coalition to help fight them, not just from the air, but also on the ground. And how do they get out, though, of the situation that they've found themselves in, all of these countries, whereby they have said they will not work with those two countries, but it looks increasingly like they probably should, shouldn't they?
No, I actually doubt very much that Assad or Iran could help us in this. In fact, Assad created the problem in the first place. He is a magnet bringing in these foreign fighters. He doesn't have enough ground troops now to eject the Islamic State from Syria. That's why he lost the air base in north-central Syria about 2 weeks ago, and many of his soldiers were killed in the process. He's lost bases in eastern Syria. He doesn't have enough troops. And the Iranians are not going to send thousands of fighters to fight in eastern Syria either. If they were going to, they would have done it a long time ago. So what is regrettable about all of this is that Assad's actions, encouraged by Iran, have made this situation as bad as it is today. Regrettably, Assad refused to negotiate a transition government years ago. So going forward, the only people who can fight on the ground are going to be those who are fighting the Islamic State right now, and those are elements of the Syrian opposition, what we in Washington refer to as the moderate Syrian opposition.
But this grand coalition is doing a great service, isn't it, to Bashar al-Assad, who, as you say, without their fighters, would find his own dwindling army absolutely cornered by this organization. So by taking them on, we're actually helping Assad, are we not?
Assad probably gains a bit, but I think the moderate opposition actually will gain more as this goes forward, because the Islamic State, interestingly enough, is not attacking Assad right now. It's attacking the moderate armed opposition up north of Aleppo along the Turkish-Syrian border. They're trying to cut off the supply lines of the moderate armed opposition coming down from Turkey. So to the extent that American strikes weaken the Islamic State right now. I think the moderate armed opposition, which is trying to secure its supply lines, will benefit more in the short term.
And do you see that there is perhaps this is an opportunity going hand in hand with other efforts that have been made, for example, the nuclear talks, for the West to do more to reach out to Iran and to perhaps bury the hatchet to a certain extent? And we saw evidence of that just today, the British Prime Minister David Cameron holding talks with Hassan Rouhani. Those are the first high-level talks of their kind since 1979. There is some effort being made already to bring Iran back into the international community. And couldn't this serve as an opportunity to work with the Iranians as opposed to always working against them?
Well, it depends what the Iranians themselves want to do. For example, much of the problem in Iraq stems from the previous government in Baghdad's sectarian policies, which the Iranians supported. So if the Iranians now want a government in Baghdad, the new government under Prime Minister Abadi, to act in a more national and inclusive way, that will be great. That will be terrific. The Iranians could start by helping Prime Minister Abadi appoint a Minister of Interior and a Minister of Defense who are themselves nationalistic and not particularly sectarian. But by promoting a guy like Hadi al-Amri, the Iranians and their friends in Baghdad are promoting sectarianism. And the same thing applies to Syria. I would not say Iran is necessarily going to be helpful here, even though it has an interest in limiting Sunni extremism. A lot of the Iranian tactics are actually aggravating the Sunni extremism problem.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so very much indeed for speaking to us. Robert Ford, former US ambassador to both Algeria and Syria. Thank you so much for your analysis.